Hello and welcome. This is Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining me today. In this video, I'm going to share with you a color layering bunny card using this color layering bunny bundle from Hero Arts. I'm going to start with doing the bunny on some Kraft mixed media heavy stock. I like the brown base to it, and because I want my bunny to be brown anyways, it is the perfect base for starting this off. But if you wanted a lighter colored bunny, you could easily start with a lighter colored paper or even white. I like to start out when I have a brand new stamp set that I haven't used before, especially if it's a clear one. I use a white eraser and I erase all along the stamping surface. This removes any manufacturing residue and helps that stamp take ink a little bit better. Once I've done it for the set, it never needs to be done again. And I always, if I'm going to use one stamp from the set, I just do the entire set and I know that they have been done and don't need to be done again, or other ones have to be done next time I'm using it. I'm using my Misty stamping tool in order to position the stamp. I'm going to make two bunnies at the same time. I'm only creating one card and using one for one card. I'll create another one exactly the same off screen. And I do have a grip mat in my Misty stamping tool. Sometimes the suction from the stamp, though, likes to pull that paper up. It's a little bit more sometimes than the suction of the grip mat in there. So I will have to position it a couple times. The first color that I am stamping with is Frayed Burlap. It's just a little bit darker than the mixed media heavy stock. This color layering stamp actually only has 3 stamps. There's the shading on the bunny, there's the outline on the bunny, and then there's some pink for his nose and ears. So it's a very easy color layering stamp to do. And I love these, especially for someone that doesn't necessarily love to do coloring. They're perfect. It creates an image really, really quickly and easily. I do highly recommend you have a stamp positioning tool to use, whether it's a Misty or the Tim Holtz stamp platform or something like that, because it's nice to be able to stamp multiple times to darken your ink, as well as the fact that if you happen to, say, not ink your stamp well enough and you missed a spot, it's really easy to go back and fix that. It's also very easy to position the next layers of your stamp. And in here, because I'm doing 2 different bunnies, it's really easy to just turn my paper 180 degrees and I know that that stamp is positioned properly. When you're positioning the next layer, it's really a good idea to be right above that stamp. If you want to check it ahead of time, a great way to do that is take a little piece of recycled packaging or a piece of acetate and lay it over your image and just stamp it on that acetate, and you'll be able to see right away if it is positioned properly or not. Mine is actually just slightly like a hairline off, but for what I'm doing, it still looks great and it works perfect. So you can see how quick and easy it is to get an entire image completely done here really, really quickly and easily. For my pink for the nose and the ears, I'm going to use an oxide ink. So I'm going to use Kitsch Flamingo. It's a nice light pink, but because of that oxide, it's going to have some opacity to it. The dye inks or the distress inks are just dye based, and you'll see a little bit of the brown cardstock through it. But by using an oxide, it's got some dye and pigment blend there. So it's just a little bit more opaque and it's going to show up better on that brown. And once again, you can stamp it multiple times just to make sure that you get some nice crisp ink there. I had the nose part a little bit higher than I wanted, so I repositioned it and stamped it once again, and then it was positioned properly. These stamps are also great if you wanted to mass produce a bunch of cards at once. You could easily have a bunch of pieces of cardstock, do what I'm doing with this one, but then swap out the other pieces as well. So you get a lot of bunnies or whatever design you wanted to create all at once. And they do make the color layering stamps, or Hero Arts makes the color layering stamps in so many different themes and animals and flowers and whatnot. So there's a lot of variety to choose from. Now that I have my bunny done, I just put it to the side. In this set, there's also a cluster of daisies. So I'm just using a scrap piece of cardstock. I'm going to stamp it multiple times. I'm just using distress ink. I want to color this just with a dye-based marker. I'm just using some Tombow markers. You could also stamp it with Memento ink and then color it with Copics, however you would like. The dye-based ink makes it really, really easy to clean off of your stamp. So the dies come attached with just a little tiny metal piece. I used some die snips in order to cut them off. The piece that was stuck to the second part, or the flower part of the die, I snipped that off right above my garbage can so that I know it's just going to go right into the garbage can, and I'm not going to have a piece of metal flying across the room or possibly in an eye or somewhere where it could be dangerous. So it's really a good idea to either do it into a cloth or something, or right into the garbage can, so you don't have a random piece of metal somewhere. I like to tape my dies in place, and these ones are very easy to position. By taping them in place, I know that that's not going to shift while I'm die cutting, and I have my pieces die cut super quick. I'm going to use 3 clusters of flowers for the one card, so I'm just going to color them all together. I have different colors of Tombow markers here. I've got a yellow, I've got 2 different shades of green, and then for the shading on the flower, I just pick out a gray, super light gray. Even though those flowers or those daisies are white, there is going to be a tiny bit of shading in there, and a light gray, very minimal color is perfect for that. The shading on white is not something you necessarily notice a lot, but once you put it on there, you can see the difference it makes. So I like to put the light green down first for my leaves, and then I go in with the dark green and just put a little bit at the base cluster of leaves, just to give it a little bit of shading and a little bit more color there. You can see as I'm coloring the shading on those flowers that it does make a little bit of a difference, but it's not in your face shading. It's just a subtle detail that kind of completes it. So the last step I'm going to do before I start to create the base of my card is I have a white Signo gel pen, put it in the pupil of the bunny eye, and then I have some Stickles, and I'm just putting that in the center of the daisies for some sparkle, and I'll set that aside to dry while I go and work on my card base. I have some glossy accents. I just put it on the tip of the bunny nose so that would have just a little bit of gloss to it. For my background, I'm just going to do a very simple inked background. So I have some crushed olive distress ink here, and I'm working on the bottom. You want to make sure when you're doing ink blending, try a light hand first, and then gradually go a little bit heavier. That way you don't end up with too much ink all at once. And here is especially where that advice means something. This is a brand new Tumbled Glass ink pad, and with my old ink pad, I would have to really press in order to get color down. So you can see that the color here is really blotchy because I ended up going a little bit too heavy-handed to start. By the time we're done, and you're never going to notice, it completely softens as I do a little bit more ink blending and as that ink dries a little bit. But just keep in mind, when you're doing ink blending, start with a really light hand and gradually build up that pressure. Once I'm done with that Tumbled Glass, I have some Salty Ocean, and I'm just going to add a little bit darker color towards the top of my background here. What I often like to do with ink blended backgrounds is do them twice. So I'll do all the colors once, and then I'll often go back twice, especially if there's some colors that are a little bit blotchy like that Tumbled Glass was, or if I'm not necessarily loving what's happening. I kind of really liked the texture from the Tumbled Glass after I did it for a little bit. Once I did the Salty Ocean here, I did go over that Tumbled Glass with my ink blending brush that had the Salty Ocean on there, but was a little bit dry. So that helped to even out the background. And in the end, I really love the texture on that sky there. But keep in mind, if you have a very juicy ink pad and it's brand new, you might want to be a little bit lighter handed, or add the ink to your brush and then brush some off, so you just have a little bit less ink on there. So the card assembly is super quick because I have all of those pieces already ready to go. I just put my base or my background onto my card base, and I'm choosing a green card base here. It works perfectly with the green grass part of my ink blended background. And then I'm going to glue on those die cuts. And I'm using some Barely Art glue. I have them in a Spellbinders fine line glue bottle. This is just a brand new one that was sent to me from Spellbinders, and I really like the thin, narrow tip to it. It did take a little bit to get used to squeezing the bottle because it's a little bit less flexible than the one that I had before, but as I got used to it, I really liked it. While I'm waiting for those die cuts to dry on the front of my card, I took some Versamark ink and I stamped a sentiment on the inside of my card, and I'm going to emboss it with some white embossing powder. You could use whatever color you want here. I just thought the white would tie in really nicely with the white daisies on the front, and it shows off really nicely on the blue insert color that I chose for the inside of the card. I chose it because it's the same color as the sky on the front, and I thought the tie-in was really nice. Finally, using a heat tool to heat that embossing powder, and you can see exactly how quick and easy it is to put that sentiment in there. You could also just take some black ink or one of the ink colors that you used for the front of the bunny and stamp it on the inside with that as well. I just like the pop of white. So now that I have that insert on the inside of my card, I like to put an acrylic block on there just like I did with those die cuts on the front of the card and let that dry nicely. And here's our finished color layer bunny card. There's a few sentiments in this set. One of them is Happy Spring and one of them is Happy Easter. I kept it very generic so that it would work well for a longer season, but you could easily turn this into a spring or an Easter card just with those, swapping out those sentiments. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Have a fantastic day.